weeks earlier than previously known.
And California is recommending that all people in high-risk settings get tested for coronavirus.
All right, so good afternoon, everybody that I haven't spoken to. Thanks for joining in to our weekly update or check-in, so we can norm ourselves around the work with updates and what we are doing in the field, and then any new things that we need to kind of focus on and talk about. So we're going to start off with, again, our praise reports and celebrations as referred to personal or professional. Anybody want to start us off and share any good news? Anybody?
It's too, Sarah.
Anybody got any virtual PLCs? Good news?
I want to get that.
Thank you so much for joining us. You're there in Georgia, which is set free open here.
Dr. Rainey, reflecting on my PLCs with my math teachers, one thing that I learned that needs to be a focus for the upcoming years, we need to dig a little deeper when it comes to our standards. My teachers in the math department were so focused on lessons according to the pacing guide that we really did not reflect on what the standards say and how those lessons supported standards. So moving forward, we're going to be digging a little deeper into our math content standards and truly understanding what is required of our students according to the standards and not the lessons on the pacing guide.
Wow.
Awesome. So I just want to shout through the roof right now. Someone jump in and tell me, why do you think not Tamika, but why is that what Tamika just said important? Why is that important?
Well, I think he's saying exactly what we all expect.
To shift from focusing so heavily on a pacing guide with lessons and the structure of lessons and focusing on the standard.
Well, because students, it's one thing to keep up with a calendar as far as, okay, this is the third 9 weeks, we should be on unit 7 now, and whatever. But if the students are not learning the content, if they're not able to apply the skill, then all of that pacing just goes out of the window, because they end up at testing time not really having what they need.
Yeah, and I would like to add to that. Can y'all hear me?
Mm-hmm.
What I think that was Roz speaking, that is so true. And also the students are being assessed on the standards and not so much as the lessons. The lessons are the guide, but they're being assessed on the standards. And the more we learn those standards and how they actually drive our instruction, the better standardized test results that we'll get. And our students will definitely get those masteries.
Good, and I'm glad. Thank you. Thank you, Williams and Ross, for jumping in on that. With that, I just want to hear your feedback on it, you guys. That's why it's so important, and I think we're coming and we're going to norm ourselves around the work. When we're talking about student work analysis and all of that, we're going to have a little discussion about that today. With that, but Tamika, I'm glad you discovered that doing what you're working on now, because that is so important. A lot of times when we're thinking about teaching and we're thinking about scope and sequence and all those things, a lot of times teachers are teaching for exposure. They teaching to exposure, not teaching to mastery. So I want to expose you to what these lessons are saying, but I don't even have a true grasp myself. Did you really master these power standards? And that's why we always end up, especially in our zone schools, with surprises at the end of the school year. When there really shouldn't be surprises that we are really tracking through standards, because it's going to tell us if kids can master that standard that's on that state test. And so I think that's one big piece of our master teacher work and our master teacher lens is on how do we make sure and we ensure that teachers are really understanding the standard. And I think that was kind of like the birth of our project, of that framework with that. But even more so than that, it goes deeper when we're talking about a student work analysis, and I'll talk a little more about it in just a minute, but I want to kind of follow the agenda. But that's a good share out. Jesse, with you, because we're on number 2, you guys. Y'all really didn't want to have any praise celebrations and make Sarah feel good today with your celebrations and your praise reports, and Sarah will be waiting on that. And so you guys, you disappoint her. But we do have a celebration. If you guys have been watching news, you've seen one of our very own, Miss Jupe is really, really giving back to the community.
Miss LaShonda, yeah.
With our care packages and all those kind of things with the work she's doing around the COVID stuff. So shout out to Jupe for doing that. That's major, and especially having family members to be affected by it and die from it, and she's still with the strength giving back to the community. So again, Jupe, good job on that. God is definitely gonna bless you in that aspect, just giving back during this time. So I want Jessica to talk a little about her cluster last week. I got a chance to attend the whole cluster and actually participate in the whole cluster, and was just thoroughly impressed with the format, the flow of it more so because good things happen, and it wasn't stuff to stress teachers out either, but it was good learning transpired in a virtual cluster, just like it was at Oak Park. So Jesse, can you just give us a little background and talk about some of the things you did in that cluster?
Sure. I was we're doing a book study in our clusters. So I know we wanted to work to build their capacity as teachers. At the same time, we're making some changes on our campus. So a lot of teachers who are in certain places now are not going to be in those places next year, or they might not even be on our campus. So how can I keep them engaged and work with me as I try to help them build their capacity? So knowing my teachers and knowing that they struggle with letting go of our students, is this book that I was reading called Empower, that kind of walks through empowering our students and letting go and letting them do most of the work. And so during the PLC last week, I had sent them some pages that I wanted them to read because I wanted to get some
Are you talking about your eyes?
buy-in from them. And so they read the pages. And in the PLC, we broke off into groups. That's something, playing around with Zoom, I learned how to do breakout rooms. And so they had an assignment before they came to cluster. Or PLC or whatever. They had to read the pages that I sent, which is it's easy read, is a real good book. And they kind of had to make some personal ties or professional ties to the book. And they had to find highlights, and it was something else, Ms. Barton, if you remember what it is, remind me, that they had to do. And so when
What's next? So what now what?
Right. So they broke out into their groups. As a group, they came up with those ties and experiences. We came back, we talked about it, and then they did a Google form, which is so what, now what, like what are the implications that we can make based off of what we read today? How can we use this to improve our practices? I think I said all of it. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I just want you to give that was good enough. Thank you, Jess, for being put on the spot too. I just want you to talk through some of the things that you guys did, because it was just like you was in your real cluster room, and so you had things set up. You guys, what it takes is planning on your part, on the master teacher's part. And again, I don't want you to take away the content of what she's doing, because everybody's not ready for, number one, a book study. Number two, a book study wasn't even on our projected plan, but their school already have a plan of action. They already know it's about to be a shift on their campus. We're about to do some looping. We're about to do some grade shifts. We're about to do some get off the bus. So therefore, I don't want to just waste time with standards when teaching in depth to standards and content, where half of these teachers going to be in different grades, or half of these teachers going to be above, below grades, or some going to be gone. So I'm going to do something that I know can really work with and benefit them wherever they go. It's just really teaching them on how to stop doing the heavy scaffolding and turning loose, and then kids grapple with materials. But the thing that I really want you to take away is the grouping. She was able to do groups within a virtual cluster where she assigned them to groups. She was able, as the facilitator, to hop in every group. I think she had 3 to 4 groups. She was able to hop in every group to listen to see what they was talking about. She gave each group a role or assignment that she wanted them to do and focus on to hold them accountable. Each group had to complete a chart within this cluster. They had to complete a Google document so that that was readily available so that everybody can see. So first of all, she can see what they was putting and kind of guide the conversations. But number two, everybody else can actually kind of see once the document was shared exactly what they put that was aligned. And then one of the most impressive things, she was able to make rubric connectors too, so they can understand and feel like, hey, this still feels like cluster. So she was able to she was able to make those connectors and those kind of things. Am I requiring and telling you, hey, you got to make sure you do all this just like Jesse? No way. But I am telling you that if you really your cluster still can be as powerful if you make them that way. It's all about what you put into when you are meeting with your teachers and what you guys are diving into. And even if you are talking about RTI, or if you're talking about remediation, or if you're talking about standards and deep in standards, you guys, it's a way for you not to be doing the heavy lifting. All the heavy lifting, and it's just like a sit and get. Watch me. This is what I'm going to take you through. It's a way that you can put them in groups. It's a way for you can make them do a lot of talking. It's a way for you can set some things up to make sure you're holding them accountable for the actual learning. So that's the reason why I really wanted Jessie to actually share, because of course she had to do a lot of planning on the front end, but when she left that cluster, it was those teachers who had done most of the thinking behind it and or what she wanted them to think. She was just the guide and the facilitator of that. So I do want to say kudos to that. And again, you guys, if you feel that you got some good stuff jumping on, you guys, I'll easily get out of my meeting with Angela because I prefer to be in your meetings. So if you feel like, hey, I want you to see this, I just send an email just like she did, a text. She say, hey, if you're available, just jump in cluster today and do those things. I know some of you are sharing your cluster ID when you have your virtual meetings with me anyway. It's just that my thing is I'm not going to just jump in because most of the time I am still meeting with Angela or working on a project. But if it's something that you really, really want me to see, just send me a text or send me an email and I'll jump in, and was able to provide some good feedback to her as well based on what she had done to make it even stronger the next time. So it was just really good, solid stuff. And you guys, it didn't stress teachers out. Or teachers didn't walk around like, oh, wow, this is too much. It was just enough, but it was good stuff around good stuff. So continue to do what you're actually doing with that. And as C spotlights, you guys, I am going to ask you to share, because we don't know how long we'll be doing this virtual platform. And even though you guys are not required to work all summer, there's probably some times when you want to just say, hey, let me jump on and tell them, hey, y'all focus around this during the summer, those kind of things to try to keep them abreast of where we need to go. And so now let's go talk about, again, the critical needs of teacher collaboration. You guys, you did and you completed, most of you, I think we pretty much got everybody, probably 1 or 2 schools haven't completed it. What do you say are critical needs for your teachers in order for them to be successful on the Google Docs that I shared on last week? If you hadn't got a chance to share or update yours, just go in and update. It's not a spanking meeting because you hadn't done it. Just go in and update some things. I've been going through and I've been putting comments just for me on the side. So if you see a comment, I went through and put some comments for some schools to kind of just norm me around big rocks. What in your conversations, I'm hearing and I'm seeing big rocks. And so pretty much I want to go back and kind of just talk about some of those things that I've seen as big rocks when it relates to our work, kind of things. And so here, when I was going through reading everybody's, what are you saying? These are what teachers need, or this is what we need on our campus, and these are some things that we need on our campus. Some things that really stood out to me. One of the main things that stood out was a RTI framework. I let somebody in. Oh, that's Stacy. My friend got internet. Hey, Stacy, friend. You finally got some internet. Her internet been out, y'all, for a whole month. So I don't know how she been surviving, but internet been out for like a whole month. But one was an RTI framework, you guys. More so I've seen this coming from my middle high, my middle high on what does this look like for us? What actually need to take place? And then in some elementary schools, they have RTI in an RTI block, but is it done? Is the time used effectively? So we definitely gonna have to, when they talk about trends for our work. I know this, a part of this is not your work with master scheduling and all those kind of things. But on next week, I'm gonna have a principal. I'm gonna meet with principals, like a principal PLC, like we normally would have once a month, so that we can start talking about and norming ourselves around some of these things. Because again, especially in middle high, principals are going to have to be very, 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 very strategic when it comes to scheduling. And so that's the thing that I want to make sure that they walk away with from our meeting next week. If you are going to expect to get that target score or that school goal that they set for this year, and my thing is that goal really is not going to change, because I still need that same goal for whenever we do testing. What's going to change is student goals, because now my students are in different grades or in a different grade level, and so I don't have anything about to project what those goals are. So we're going to have to really spend a lot of time setting student goals for the current grade level. But that school goal really won't change. But in order, you guys, I'm going to be honest, for any schools to really make some success, they're going to have to really, really put thought into what does RTI, what does the framework looks like. I don't know how many of you know, most of you know Carla Mitchell, who from the RTI department or team. She's putting together some series of what this looks like for middle high. I spoke with her last week and asked her about it. And so she said, yes, she's developing some stuff. So she's going to be really, really a resource person for us, especially for middle high, because you guys are ones who really need to know what it looks like on your campus, because elementary schools, that's not a problem. Most of everybody in elementary schools have the minutes and have an RTI set master schedule. Now, what teachers are actually doing during that block is the thing that we got to focus on. Are they really doing the right stuff that's going to close these gaps or expose these kids to this untaught stuff? It's the main thing. So that's one trend that I noticed as I read through your critical needs. Another thing that I noticed is a lot of you talked about the vertical progression of standards. You guys, I put here master teacher knowledge. This should be your studying right now. Like everybody like a good book to read every now and then. This is what you should really be studying, progression of standards. And my thing is I'll only focus on ELA and math. I'll look at math standards and I'll look at ELA standards if you're a master teacher that supports those content areas, and looking at the progression to see how does this standard progress from first grade to second grade to third grade to fourth grade to fifth grade, or how does this standard progress from sixth grade ELA to eighth grade ELA, or from English 1 all the way up to English 4? How does this standard progress when it comes to math? How do these standards progress? Because if I'm going to really build teachers' capacity on, hey, this is what a gap is, I need to know how these standards are progressing. So I think this is where we need to really, as a master teacher, kind of for us and our learning, is to really start looking at standard progression things. Another part that I noticed was using the IGP to monitor standard mastery. I'm so thankful Tamika brought the comment up about standards. You guys, again, some of our campuses have really, really done a very effective job with IGP process this year. I mean, a really, really good job. Some of our campuses are still struggling with this process because I think you're making it too big. You're making it bigger than what it really needs to be. When we're thinking about an IGP process really just controls you shouldn't have 5 and 6 different documents, RTI document, or data tracking document, or IGP document. IGP kind of covers all of that. If we really are tracking mastery, you guys, we got to start shifting from a lesson to standard. We got to start looking at the standard. This is the standard that I'm going to focus on for 6 weeks on this IGP. I'm going to look at this standard. This standard is a power standard. Now, every week when I'm looking at student work, I'm only going to look at student work that's really geared toward that standard. So in a matter of 6 weeks, I can say, hey, 25% of these kids master this standard, 75 didn't, or 75% of these kids master this standard, and that's when we begin to really know if we are moving kids, because if they are mastering standards. And so we got to really shift, and that begins to start talking about how does that look weekly, strengthening our student work analysis, which again, you guys, you're going, as master teachers, you're going to have to do a better job of holding teachers accountable for that. Sometimes when these teachers are sharing our trends from their student work, it doesn't connect to the standard. It doesn't tell me nothing about what can those kids do within the standard. So we're gonna have to really, really build our knowledge of the standard. So when they are sharing trends, or when we are actually looking at if they're doing it through a Google Docs, if they're doing it through a template and we are reading through it, we got to make sure that those high, medium, and low trends, you guys, are standard based. The standard says they should be focusing on being able to multiply 3-digit numbers or being able to cite text evidence. So when we're looking at their trends should have a lot of standard talk. Can kids do it? Do kids are still struggling with it? So that we are the kids messing the standards. So those two, IGP and student work analysis things, go hand in hand in hand. And I already talked about the being strategic with scheduling. As me and Angela was talking through this on last week, just trying to prepare some notes on what we kind of focus on for the principal to talk to with principals, you guys. We was even just talking about how this year is to be truly thinking outside of the box when it comes to scheduling. Things that you never thought of, you should be willing to try to work on, try to implement and see how it works with that. Even when we're thinking about elementary, Angela kind of projected, the thing is we probably gonna have to be very flexible with teaching. And we know this group of kids had some gaps when they left their teacher, making teachers kind of flip-flop. Hey, you follow those kids for the first 9 weeks to continue to close, and then you go back to your other grade. But just all kind of things. So what Angela was kind of saying, she wants principals to understand there is no crazy solutions or no crazy thoughts on how you want to do scheduling if you have thought it out and made it work when it comes to it. But I think we got to jump on it early so that principals can pretty much have at least 2 or 3 months to just really think about how do I want my scheduling to look and how do I want to make sure that I'm really, really attentive to this RTI process, that it's time and it's scheduled in that. So when we're thinking about our work, again, you guys as master teachers, the main thing is for independent is making sure that, hey, I know the standards. I know what these standards are requiring. I know how to make sure that I can communicate this to teachers on this is what you, and my thing is when we're talking about communicating with teachers, you guys, we're talking about the process. This is the process you take to really, really unpack this standard or understand this standard. And so really making sure that we understand it, but not only that, we can also teach it to teachers. And so teachers can walk away from the table knowing that, hey, I can go through this process. And unpack a standard. But then with the strengthening the IGP and monitoring our IGP process and the student work process, you guys, that's an easy fix. We just got to make sure it's really, really standard focused. It's heavily standard focused and not lessons. The kids master the lesson, but we should be always talking through standard. And my thing is, when we're talking about standards, again, you guys, we're talking about power. The power standards, those standards that we kind of see in their vertical progression, where it's a vertical, they doing the same kind of thing, but it's building in every grade level. We're not just talking about every single standard. We're not talking about let's track and monitor supporting standards. Of course, they need those supporting standards to even master the power standard. But we really want to make sure that we are gauging, can kids master those power standards in the content? And so that's, again, our trends for our work based on what we just completed on last week with you guys talking about what is critical for teachers. Now, I want to go back to here because this is another thing that I'm going to start asking some of you, probably send out some emails tomorrow when it comes to is creating digital modules for some of this work. And so, I think 2 weeks ago, I told you about the zone conference, how most of the master teachers will be the ones who are presenting stuff at the zone conference. But again, Angela wants us to go to a full virtual platform because they, again, don't foresee we're being able to meet in large crowds to do a full conference this summer. But they still want to have a virtual platform for where teachers, principals, leaders can assess things digitally. And so that really means us kind of putting together some essentials. And when I'm talking about, it can't be a full carried out 2-hour session, 3-hour session. I'm looking at about 45 minutes just talking through a process, doing a PowerPoint slide deck, talking through a process, pre-recorded, and then we send in some links. And so there are some things that I really, really want us as master teachers to kind of focus on that I know we are doing. And one thing is a vertical progression of standards. And so there's some campuses where I've seen that done very well. And so my thing is I'll probably reach out to you and say, hey, can you just put together like a 30 to 45 minute process on walking through, if I say walk a teacher through this process, you jump on a Zoom, record the Zoom, and we can turn it into an actual session where teachers can just go to that link, watch that, and watch you going and talking them through that process. So those are kind of some things that I'll be kind of asking some of you to do in the upcoming weeks or so, because Angela wants us to have pretty much most of them done by the first week of May 8th, I think. Is when she's asking for most of them to be done, but it's just the critical pieces of those things. And I know that a lot of these things we can actually put a piece together for that. Also, I've also seen some very, very strong student work analysis on some of your campuses, even when you're turning your school review and your mid-year review stuff. And so I'll be going back through those things and saying, hey, can you just really talk us through your student work analysis process and really stamp looking at the standard and how these trends should match to these standards. So it won't be nothing that's really heavy lifting from you guys. If I ask you to actually kind of put the session together, it won't be no 3-hour, 4-hour session, because one, nobody's going to sit in front of their computer that long and concentrate on that. But 30 to 45 minutes of you just really doing a slide deck and a talking presentation, going through a PowerPoint or document saying this is what you do, so that teachers can have a better understanding of the concept that we're going to be focusing on. So again, that's going to be my project for the next 2 days of putting together, like, hey, I need a session on this, a session on this, a session on this, and then reaching out to you to actually do it. And so you guys don't be afraid to say no, but please, if you know, if I'm reaching out to you, I know you got a good grasp of it. So please try to help me out with this one, because there's no way that I can put all these sessions together in the time frame that I have and working on another major project. So I think that's pretty much all that I had for this week. Did you guys have any questions? Anybody got any questions right now? Look at Sarah. Come on, Sarah.
I have 2 questions.
Okay.
Okay, so today's cluster was on RTI. I gave them critical attributes for RTI. Mm-hmm. And the first step of that was analyzing the student work in a timely manner. Mm-hmm. Now, the teachers realized, or everybody had to admit today, that they don't do it. And by the time they get to it, they've moved on to something else. So it really doesn't make sense to go back and look at their student work, because now that doesn't matter. My question to the elementary teachers in this group: how do you guys manage elementary teachers' time so that the student work can be assessed in a timely manner so y'all can get the data y'all need? Because the teachers today complained about the volume of work that has to be graded, as well as the small amount of time in which we're asking that be done.
Let's go elementary. Come on, Tori. I see you raise your hand.
One of the things that was a big deal in making sure they understand the timeliness, Sarah, is picking the piece that's the most high leverage. Like, you cannot analyze everything effectively. Some things you're grading, but that target assignment that we discussed and was pre-approved, that's part of their pre-work to make sure there's a high leverage piece pre-approved in the cluster that they have created a good instructional plan with, and they are meeting the bulk of their students' needs. That's the piece of student work at my campus that they analyze, because that's going to give us the number one predictors. So the first thing is picking the most high leverage piece that's attached to the standards and is going to either reveal the true things that you targeted in that instructional plan. They are looking for evidence of whatever they set forth, and ours goes, because if I analyze student work this week, then they create an instructional plan, they find an upcoming lesson that targets or has the same high leverage targets, they create an instructional plan, and then we decide right then that that's a piece of work that's going to be analyzed and brought back, because that's what we already looked at the student errors, created a plan to anticipate what was happening, and they're looking for evidence of their instruction in it. So they're looking for multiple layers in it, and that's how it works on my campus.
Thank you, Tori. Sarah want to hear from more people. Come on, y'all can really help her with this one.
Sarah, the only thing I wanted to add to what Tori said was that we make sure that it's also in line to the school goal, which should give us the biggest bang for our buck on the campus. So they're not just analyzing everything. It's exactly what Tori said. That should also be in line with the school goal, because that's what we're aiming towards, if that makes sense.
And I'm very fortunate at my school because I work very closely with my coordinator. So whatever we analyze in cluster is also a partnership with extended cluster. So we work very, very closely hand in hand. So the data and the standards that we're looking at in cluster is also a partnership on what they're doing as well in extended cluster. So it's kind of like a partnership between cluster and extended cluster as well.
White.
Basically for us, it's the same thing that Miss Mack and Tori said, but we just picked up from the know and the show, looking at the unit focus for each particular subject. And when we analyzed that data, did the know and show, we just made sure, okay, third grade, you're focusing on, let's just say, multiplication. So I know that every time that you come in for this cycle, you're bringing something on those standards from that particular unit. So they know in advance, okay, I know I need to bring this. So when I'm teaching this lesson, I need to set aside student work on this because this is what our unit focus is. So that's what they're bringing weekly. So they just know to set that aside when they're grading their work and do that student work analysis right then.
Are y'all having to micromanage? Like, I mean, hey, let's get together and look at your student work today. Hey, did you grade your assignments for your cluster group? Are y'all having to do that?
For some teachers,
No, ma'am.
we are for some teachers, and that's where the mentors come into play.
It depends on the teacher.
For some teachers, yeah, for some teachers, I have had to do that.
We create a process, and they already know what's going to happen. Is identifying and making sure that the highest piece, the highest leverage piece that is lended to the student work that we analyze. So for us, it's just kind of like a cyclic process. They know that that's going to be 15 minutes of that meeting, discussing it, talking about it, saying why this is or why this isn't a high leverage piece. So in the beginning, possibly, but once that cycle is created, then they just kind of know what's happening.
I just want to add to that I have to kind of lean towards what White and someone else had said, that it is a matter of the individual teacher on my campus. I think accountability from administration is huge in that part of it, because they need that. You need that buy-in from administration in order to, especially in the cluster world, to make sure that they are being accountable and bringing the things they need to bring. Now, one thing about me, if you come with that, I am going to ask you to leave and go back and get it in return with it. However, I do have some people who consistently, still have to do those reminders. So generally the day before is when I would, kind of touch bases with them. Unfortunately, last year, this year still, I was kind of limited on mentor support. So a lot of it was me having to walk that out to really just make sure that they understood that tomorrow you're going to be able to share out on this. And so just that accountability is hard for some people to adjust to. Some never did. But that to me is one thing that I think will definitely give you the biggest bang for your buck, is getting your administration to back you on what you're requesting.
Okay, my second question. When you guys are in cluster and the teacher gives the wrong answer, how do you respond?
Well, I could see how you would feel that way. However, let's dig a little deeper, or give them some clarifying things that just kind of point out, well, if it's let's look back at our critical attributes, or let's think back to the new learning, or let's think back to what I said about such and such, and then try to kind of frame their thoughts and get them to understand why that wasn't the right thinking, without just saying, no, ma'am.
That's not funny, man.
I agree with Tori completely. That's exactly what we do. Try not embarrassing them, just clarifying questions, guiding them.
Y'all are so crazy. I'm looking at this thing.
Did we help you, Sarah?
Listen, I don't tell them you wrong. I just, when it's wrong, I just say, okay. And I move on to my next thought. And so teachers complain that I'm dismissive. Say, listen, I'm not trying to be dismissive, but I don't want to be condescending either.
Yeah.
So I
It's
can
a
work on some
delicate balance.
frames.
It's a delicate balance, but I believe more importantly, for me, is to get them, let's undo this thinking. I tell them it's no different than if a student gives you the wrong answer. Are you gonna allow that student to say 2 + 2 is 5 and keep going? So I try to get them to understand the thinking and their thinking, because my big thing is if I don't get you to clarify your thinking and get you on the right page now, you're gonna do everything from this moment wrong, and I'm gonna be really ticked off when you come back and you be like, da, 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 you know, and it's because I didn't clarify your thinking. So I try to think of them just like the students in my classroom and go, okay, well, I understand your thoughts, but let's go back and dig a little deeper. Let's go back and understand how it can look differently. Or, you know, because I guess I try to remind everybody's experience is different for how we got there. And so just cultivate, or else I'll point out somebody else. Why don't you share out what you said earlier? Because sometimes it's easier to come from another colleague, you know what I'm saying, who I know has the proper thinking on it. And then they'll be like, oh, okay, that's completely opposite of what. So sometimes it works better to not come from me, but to allow someone who I know has the right thought process to tag it in that moment.
Definitely good stuff. Anybody else want to share? Because you're saying some good stuff. Although Sarah asked the question, you guys, you helping more than Sarah, or you giving more advice. A lot of people are benefiting from it. So don't be shy to share, especially if you got some good stuff to jump in with.
Well, I want to, this is Rosalind. I wanted to just to share, but I was, I think I missed the point to jumping in because I was trying not to just kind of jump on in there. But you were talking about the critical needs of teachers. Mm-hmm. And so after we had that meeting with you, is it okay to back up that far?
Oh yeah.
Okay. So after we had that meeting with you, I basically just put it out there to the teachers in my clusters, and just, you know, made it a point to say to them, if we're going to be ready in the fall, we need to start looking at ourselves now, looking at our own instructional practices, looking at our content knowledge, and whether or not we have the right thinking when it comes to, or even the capacity when it comes to assessing student learning, because I felt like those 3 areas were the areas where our teachers needed the most help. And so in Cluster today, our development was for them to take that shared document and to just kind of work through what they know that they needed help with in order to be stronger teachers. And just like I gathered from my anecdotal records and from, you know, just talking with them, of course, assessment, being able to actually, you know, assess student learning in the right way is a big piece that we were missing. And everybody kind of also came to a point where they could actually say, you know what, when I get ready to teach this unit, I really don't feel confident because I don't think I know as much as I need to know to go as deep as I need to go with this. And so I think I'm going to need help with that. So some of what we did today, I was able to actually follow up with some critical next steps that we're going to be looking at over the rest of the summer. And so everybody was all in, and I really appreciated that can-do kind of, you know, attitude, especially now since we actually have the time. Mm-hmm. But I just wanted to put that out there. So I thought that was phenomenal, and I just felt really good about that.
Thank you, Roz. You guys, good stuff. And Raj, you just made a good point. Is now that we have time, although a lot of teachers are still with virtual, you know, with the virtual classroom, the Google Classroom, all that kind of stuff. You guys, they can't complain that they don't have time. As it was fast paced with school and you hustling and bustling and having to grade, especially when I'm thinking about middle high. all 7 classes of student work and all those kind of things, you have time to do some studying as far as building capacity around this time. And so that's a good thing. But I just think, you guys, the main thing is the way we present it and the way we chunk it, so that it's not overwhelming to them. It's not making them say, oh, wow, this is just too much. But it's really, really making them be empowered to better their craft when it comes to it. And like I say, I don't think it's no better time than now to actually start diving into that, so that they can really be ready to receive those kids and receive those kids where they are, and be able to not be overwhelmed when they come and they see kids with gaps, because they already know an action plan or a game plan or a plan of action to say, hey, we studied the vertical progression, or we studied the companion document in depth, so I know where to go to when kids are not coming. I'm grading this student work and I'm seeing that, hey, they missed this whole entire concept. They won't be overwhelmed, or they won't overwhelm you, running you and knocking your doors down, talking about help, because they haven't studied or built their capacity around it. So I think, you guys, we are diving into the right things. And again, diving into those curriculum and those standards is really, really a heavy focus right now, especially if you know, hey, we kind of got everything in place. There are not going to be a lot of changes on our campus. Those kind of things, just really diving into that to make sure teachers are really, really aware of, do they know what they're teaching when it comes to those standards and those things of that sort. Anybody else want to share out? Thank you, Ross.
I think maybe I'm the only one that hasn't shared, so I'll go ahead and share. My PLC was pretty much kind of in the direction as Roz. I did take the point to kind of stop based on what you were asking us, what our school needed, that kind of thing. I really thought about the technology piece and how I tell you all the time I struggle with technology. So I decided, as a campus, we're lacking the student engagement, as I'm sure everybody is. And so we did start with a discussion question. And I had kind of gotten with the ELA group and just kind of popped in on the Google Classrooms and checking to see how things were flowing, and decided to comment on a couple of students' answers. And got with the teacher, and we talked about how, posing a discussion question kind of really, I guess, had a light bulb moment, and to see how I could make this virtually look like cluster. So did my field testing, so to speak, with, posing a discussion question to the teachers in my Google Classroom and asked them to respond to 2 of their peers. And like I said, I did it with an ELA Google Classroom as well. And then decided that was what their assignment would be for this week, for them to pose a discussion question and just to see how that would work for students as far as engaging them. So that was pretty much it.
Good. That's good. Good stuff. Definitely good. Anybody else want to share before we go on with our meeting? All right, so my thing is, you guys, I don't know about you, but I just think these check-ins have been very valuable as we kind of norm ourselves around the work and kind of help each other through this process, and not only through the virtual process, but just through the actual master teacher role process in general, when it comes to whenever we do come back and be to get on our campuses, that we are really targeted and focused around the right stuff. And so just following up a couple things with one thing with Sarah's about the student work, when it comes to that, definitely I know that should be a norm on everybody's cluster norms with that. But as Ms. Mack stated, a lot of that has to come from leadership. Leadership has to be very invested in that to make sure teachers are bringing student work. My thing is, you can't really know if your kids are moving if you're not analyzing student work, if you're not looking at student work. And so I think even when you think about high schools, yes, they do grade. They have 6 and 7 classes. And so, no, they cannot grade all of that student work, but they should have a target group of kids that they are focusing on every week, or a targeted class. Say, hey, I'm gonna track this class student work, and should be able to at least in a week time have one assignment that's very, very high quality, and it focuses on wherever that cluster learning is targeted to, and they should be able to look for some trends and characteristics from that student work. So for them teachers to be complaining about student work and all those kind of things, I just think that's a cop-out when it comes to it. But leadership definitely will be on there, and I'll put that on my agenda, so when I meet with leaders on next week is expressing that, because a lot of times teachers will try to use it to their advantage. Oh, we don't have time, and we don't do this, and this is time. It's every week we're doing something different, and those kind of things. You can't tell me that you don't have time to grade at least one set of student work and then bring it and talk about it and be able to talk about it when we come back for a week later. There should be time to do that. And again, if we're not doing it, then we're not really affecting the moving kids, because we don't know where they are. And so we don't even know where the gaps is. So it goes back to kind of what Tamika was stating, that how we're teaching to the lessons and not to the standards. We're just going through these lessons and teaching through these lessons, but we can't tell you not one thing about if kids are moving or if they're getting that content from those standards, because we're not looking at that that student work with a critical eye when it comes to that. And so hopefully some of these digital modules will help with that, because there'll be kind of presentations for teachers. All teachers in the district or in the zone will have access to it, the way Angela is thinking about setting it up. Ms. Grimion is creating some kind of page where all of these presentations, even all of the learning, they will be shared through the teaching and learning department from the specialists. All of it will be on a virtual platform now. It won't be like a face-to-face meeting kind of thing during the summertime. Everything will be on a virtual platform, and then teachers can go at their will and watch this piece and this piece and this piece, or this video or this set of learning. And like I say, a lot of those things that's coming from the teaching and learning department, a lot of those things are mandatory because it's updates with the curriculum. So I'm sure there will be some kind of check and balance system where if teachers watched or principals really kind of push down on leaders and school leaders to make sure teachers are going and they are viewing those digital platforms or those digital modules. And so my thing is, we have a few, I'm not looking for major work around this, but just some of those key things of, again, like deepening or strengthening our student work analysis process, and what that looks like, what that sounds like, what are some target areas that we need to focus on. When I'm thinking about the IGP process, really having some conversations around what does a strong IGP looks like. How do I make sure that we are bringing attention to it every week, that it becomes part of the culture of the school and not just another thing. Those are kind of sessions that we'll kind of build, and I'll kind of ask some of you to take the lead on doing like a 30 to 45 minute presentation on, so that we can kind of build some modules around it, just to deepen our career teachers' understanding about some structures that we have in place, especially if we're going to move schools in year 4, you guys. And so I think we definitely we're going to see some growth in a lot of our campuses this school year, because I must say we've kind of focused on the right stuff on most of our campuses all school year long. We've truly married the curriculum and TAP part. So that conversation is it's not even a conversation of discussion anymore. We doing TAP or we doing curriculum. I think we've done a great job marrying that. And not only do I think that, but that's what NIET thinks too. That's why they kind of spotlighted us on the national level of Cato doing a good job with that. I just think our deepening our understanding is, again, how do we make this IGP work for us and not against us? That is another thing, but it's really, hey, everything, this IGP is your Bible. It controls and deals with every kind of thing that you got going on as a teacher. How we truly make that works for us. And it's a campus, I know for sure, one campus I'm gonna really like to lead that work, because it came through school review that every teacher, every person on that campus knew about that IGP process and knew that, hey, this is my Bible. And so something had to be put in place for teachers to really grasp that and really understand that with that. And so I know some good learning going to come from that. It's a couple campuses that I know the student work is the student work analysis piece is very powerful at their schools, and it really brings a lot of things to light when it comes to that. And so then it's some curriculum gurus that are in this set of master teachers that really know curriculum. And so it's very important that you guys use that talent to talk about what does vertical alignment, vertical progression, what does that look like for a teacher who just saying a new teacher who just know that, hey, I teach 3rd grade. How would that teacher know how to go back and look at 2nd grade stuff and all of those kind of things? So my thing is, I'm going to definitely need heavily depend on a lot of you for this work when it comes to building out these sessions. And again, by Monday, I'll have sent you an email or reached out to you, say, hey, can you think about putting something together real briefly, like 30 minutes, 45 minutes on this topic, for that we can kind of build our TAP modules. So when teachers who need to start doing their PD, they can actually click on those modules and they'll be ready for them for the summertime. So again, that's all I pretty much have, you guys, for this actual week. Just to update on just saying, hey, I did go through and I went through and I read those everybody's, and I'm still going to provide some feedback to pretty much all schools around it. But these are the things that just stood out right now that we really need to be focusing our lens on when it comes to helping teachers and us growing ourselves as master teachers. If you don't have anything else, let's talk about prayer requests. Anybody have prayer requests that they want to share out? And then we'll be able to dismiss and join ourselves again for next week. Anybody have prayer requests?
Hey, Rainey, this is Mac. Just for our kids in general, I've had several of them reach out to me that have nothing to do with learning, just that I'm sad.
Yeah.
I'll be glad when we get back. What you doing? And so, we would think that at this time they would be like, woohoo, we're out of school, but I don't think so. I think some of them are actually struggling.
Yeah.
During this time. So just for the kids in general.
I definitely agree. A lot of times I don't think we forget, but we don't really put focus on it, that a lot of times our schools are a lot of safe haven for kids. It's really a safety net for kids, because a lot of our kids live in some terrible situations. And so with them being involved in it all day and seeing it all day, it really can affect them mentally. So I think that's a good one, Ms. Matt. Anybody else?
Quick question. Roz had us put on the prayer line that traditional baking she was doing the other day. Do we have a report, Roz?
Sarah, why are you playing with me?
How that cake come out, friend?
Listen, the cake was the bomb. The cake was the bomb. It was moist. It was sweet. I bought some strawberries and I cut it in half, and I gave my neighbor across the street half of it, because y'all not about to get me on a pound cake.
So what I hear you saying is, for that first face-to-face meeting, we had that strawberry pound cake coming. Yes, won't he do it?
Not what you heard.
I'm gonna stand in faith with Tori. That's
Baby, look, let me get off this prayer request line, because I just want y'all to know this cabbage and black eyed peas and cornbread I just whipped up because I was hungry as a hostage. But I feel like I can make it now.
You better cook, Rob.
I can make it now, because I'm tired of eating sandwiches. So I had to go on and do a little something that would help me get myself together. So all is well. Sarah, Sarah, I'll speak with you.
I can't.
All right. Anybody else? All right, y'all. So let's just continue to keep, family up, us, our team, families, friends, people we know still with this COVID stuff. Again, that, they are covered and safe, because we're not out of the clear yet when it comes to it. So just keep that in mind as we move forward and continue to do good work. So again, you guys, if you need me, just text, email me. Until then, we'll talk again next Wednesday at 2:00.
All right.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.